All right, today we're going to talk about something that's pretty much every homeowner's worst nightmare: serious water damage. It's chaotic, it's definitely stressful, but understanding what's actually happening is the very first step to getting back in control.
So let's just set the scene. You walk through your front door after a long day, and bam, there's water everywhere. Total panic, right? But what really happens in those first few hours and days, we're going to walk you through that whole journey, from the initial shock all the way to a completely restored home.
And in that moment of discovery, it feels so personal, Like this crazy catastrophic thing is happening only to you. But the truth is, most of these disasters actually start from a surprisingly short list of very common household issues.
Yeah, these are the usual suspects. Maybe it's a ton of rain that forces groundwater right through your foundation, or a sudden cold snap that freezes and bursts a pipe you never even think about. It could be that old water heater in the garage that just finally decided to give up, or even a tiny slow leak from your washing machine hose that's been hiding behind the wall for months. These are the triggers that kick off all the chaos.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Your home's address, literally where it is on a map, can make it a magnet for certain kinds of water damage. It's often not just random bad luck. It can actually be a pretty predictable result of your local environment. Okay, so take a place like West Linn, Oregon. It's a fantastic example of this. The area has these steep hills and really heavy clay soil. So what does that mean? Well, when it rains, the water has nowhere to go, so it just pushes up against home foundations. Add in the fact that it's near a river, which ups the humidity, and it has these freeze-thaw cycles that just torture the plumbing. All those factors together create a perfect storm for water getting into houses.
But you know what? Once that water is in your house, it honestly doesn't matter how it got there. The only thing that matters is the clock. And believe me, it is ticking. And it is ticking fast. Yeah, this really says it all, doesn't it? When you're dealing with water damage, speed isn't just a nice to have, it is the absolute #1 most important factor. It's what decides if you're dealing with a simple cleanup or a massive tear it down to the studs reconstruction project. And this timeline shows you exactly why that clock is so terrifying. I mean, within minutes, water just soaks into everything porous. Drywall, wood, insulation, you name it. Within a few hours, those materials start to physically break down. Drywall gets mushy, wood furniture starts to warp. And here's the kicker. Somewhere between 24 and 48 hours, a simple water problem turns into a mold problem. And now you've got a serious health hazard on your hands. So that number, 48 hours, that is the magic number. It is everything. Because once you pass that 2-day mark, the game completely changes. You're not just fighting water anymore, you're fighting a biological contamination. And that requires a whole different level of work. So, faced with this insane ticking clock, how do the pros handle it? Well, I can tell you they don't just show up with a couple of towels and a bucket. They follow a very specific 3-phase playbook that's designed to bring order to the chaos and get your home dry and restored. It really boils down to this super logical 3-step process. First, get the liquid water out. Second, get the hidden moisture out. And third, rebuild everything that was damaged. Let's take a quick look at each one. All right, phase 1, this is the all-hands-on-deck emergency response. The pros roll up with these incredibly powerful truck-mounted pumps. We're not talking about a little shop vac here. These things can pull out thousands of gallons of water per hour. The whole goal is to stop the bleeding fast. Okay, so the standing water is gone. You can see the floor again. Whew, we're done, right? The worst must be over. Well, not even close. The most obvious problem is almost never the most dangerous one. And that's because the real fight, the real enemy, isn't the water you saw. It's the water you can't see. It's the moisture that got sucked up deep inside your walls, your floors, your home's entire structure. That's the stuff that causes rot and mold down the line. And this is where things get super cool, scientifically speaking. There's a whole field called psychrometrics. It's basically the science of moist air. Professionals use it to become moisture wizards. They manipulate the temperature, the humidity, and the airflow in your house to literally force that trapped moisture to come out of the building materials. It's pretty amazing. Just look at this comparison. It perfectly shows what I'm talking about. You might see a wet carpet, but what they see, with their thermal cameras and moisture meters, is water that's secretly climbed 2 feet up inside a wall cavity. That hidden moisture is the real threat. So that brings us to phase 2.
Structural drying. And this is where they bring in the heavy artillery, literally an army of massive dehumidifiers and powerful air movers. All this equipment works together to create an intensely dry environment. So dry that the walls and floors have no choice but to let go of all that water they've been holding onto.
And they don't guess. They take moisture readings every single day, and only when those readings prove the structure is bone dry, only then can phase 3 start. This is the part where things start to look normal again, replacing drywall, putting in new floors, painting, basically making it look like the flood never even happened. Okay, so your house is finally verifiably dry. The rebuilding can start. Getting your home back is the big goal here, but what's just as important is knowing what to expect, and more importantly, how to make sure this never ever happens again. And this is something that shocks a lot of homeowners, just how long the drying phase itself actually takes. It's not a one-day thing. Even a small leak can take 3 to 5 days to dry properly. And if you had major flooding, you could be looking at weeks. You just can't rush this part. Pulling the equipment out too soon is just asking for a huge mold problem later on.
But here's the thing I really want you to take away from all of this. You are not powerless here. Not at all. Really simple, proactive things like insulating some pipes, cleaning your gutters, replacing old appliance hoses, and for heaven's sake, knowing where your main water shutoff valve is, can prevent the vast majority of these disasters from ever starting.
So that's what it all comes down to, right? Seeing your home put back together is an incredible feeling of relief, for sure. But the real victory? It's walking away with the knowledge to protect that home for the future. After seeing firsthand what water can do, the most important question you can ask yourself is, what am I going to do differently now?